Life has a strange way of testing your limits, especially when it comes to trust and loyalty. I'm Nicole, a 33-year-old woman, happily married for the past 9 years to my husband, Greg. Together, we have a 7-year-old son, Jake, and a 4-year-old daughter, Lily. We live in a cozy home in a suburban neighborhood just outside of Houston. Our lives were full, busy with work, school runs, soccer practices, and play dates. And among those playdates, my best friend Emily was a constant presence. Emily and I had been friends for years. We met in college and stayed close ever since. She was my rock, my confidant, and we shared everything, especially after we both became mothers. She and her husband Jason had 2 kids around the same age as mine, and our families practically grew up together. Our friendship was effortless, and we often joked that we were more like sisters than friends. Jason and Greg got along well, too. The 4 of us would often have dinner together, watch movies, or take family trips. There was a sense of ease between us all, an unspoken understanding that we were each other's support system. Jason was friendly, the life of the party, always making everyone laugh with his witty remarks and charming personality. I never thought much of it beyond that. He was Emily's husband, and that was all he ever was to me. But one day, everything changed. It was a sunny Saturday afternoon, and Greg had taken the kids to his parents' house for the weekend so I could catch up on some much-needed rest. Emily had been out of town for a conference, so Jason was at home with their kids. I had spent most of the day tidying up the house and trying to relax, enjoying the rare quiet. Around mid-afternoon, I heard a knock at the door. I wasn't expecting anyone, so I was surprised to find Jason standing on my porch, holding a couple of iced coffees and a mischievous grin on his face. "Hey, Nicole," he greeted me, handing me one of the cups. "Thought you could use a little caffeine boost." I laughed, stepping aside to let him in. "Jason, you're a lifesaver. I've been dragging all day." "I figured," he said, settling onto the couch. "I know how it is when the kids are away. Feels weird, doesn't it?" I nodded, taking a sip of the coffee. "Yeah, it's nice, but the quiet is almost too quiet, you know?" He chuckled, nodding in agreement. "Exactly. That's why I figured I'd drop by and keep you company for a bit. Emily's still out of town, and the kids are with my parents, so I've got time to kill." We spent the next hour chatting about the usual things: work, kids, life in general. Jason had always been easy to talk to, and our conversations were usually light and full of banter. But that afternoon, something felt different. There was a subtle shift in the way he looked at me, in the way he laughed at my jokes. It was almost as if there was an unspoken tension hanging in the air. I brushed it off, telling myself I was imagining things. After all, Jason and I had known each other for years. He was practically family, and there was no reason to think anything had changed. But as the afternoon went on, that tension only grew. We moved from the living room to the kitchen, where I started prepping dinner, and Jason followed, leaning against the counter as we talked. "So, how are things with Greg?" he asked casually, his eyes meeting mine. I shrugged, not thinking much of the question. "Same as always, busy with work, you know how it is." "Yeah, I get that," he said, nodding. "But are you happy?" The question caught me off guard, and I paused, glancing over at him. "Of course I am. Why do you ask?" He hesitated for a moment before speaking again. "I don't know, Nicole. Sometimes I wonder if Greg really appreciates everything you do. You're amazing. You hold everything together, take care of the kids, keep the house running. Does he ever stop to tell you that?" I frowned, feeling a pang of discomfort. "Jason, what are you getting at?" He sighed, running a hand through his hair. "Look, I've known you for a long time, and I've seen how much you give to everyone around you. You deserve to be appreciated, to be seen for everything you are. I just don't want you to feel like you're being taken for granted." I stared at him, unsure of how to respond. Jason had always been protective of Emily, and it wasn't unusual for him to check in with me about my relationship with Greg. But this felt different. There was something in his tone, something in the way he was looking at me that made my heart race. "I appreciate the concern, Jason, but Greg and I are fine," I said, my voice a little too firm. He held up his hands in surrender. "I didn't mean to overstep. I just want to make sure you're okay." I nodded, forcing a smile. "I'm fine, really." We stood in silence for a moment, the tension between us growing thicker with each passing second. I could feel my pulse quickening, my mind racing with confusion. Why was Jason saying these things? Was it just friendly concern, or was there something more behind his words? Before I could dwell on it any longer, Jason stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. "Nicole, I've been thinking a lot about you lately." My heart skipped a beat, and I took a step back, trying to put some distance between us. "Jason, what are you talking about?" He hesitated for a moment, his eyes searching mine. "I know this is going to sound crazy, but I can't stop thinking about you. I know we're both married, and this is wrong, but I can't help it. I've been feeling this way for a while now." I stared at him, my mind reeling. "Jason, stop. You can't say things like that. You're married to Emily, and I'm married to Greg. This isn't right." "I know it's not right," he said, his voice filled with regret. "But I can't pretend I don't feel this way. I see you, Nicole. I see everything you do, everything you are, and I can't stop thinking about what it would be like if things were different." I felt a rush of emotions: confusion, anger, disbelief. This was my best friend's husband, the man I had trusted for years. How had we ended up here? "Jason, you need to leave," I said, my voice trembling. "This isn't okay." He nodded, his expression pained. "I'm sorry. I shouldn't have said anything. I had to get it off my chest." Without another word, he turned and walked out the door, leaving me standing there, my heart pounding in my chest. For the next few days, I couldn't shake the conversation with Jason from my mind. I replayed his words over and over again, trying to make sense of what had happened. How had we gone from friendly neighbors to this? I avoided Jason as much as possible, not wanting to face the awkwardness of what had been said. But it was impossible to avoid him completely. Emily was still my best friend, and our kids still played together. Every time I saw him, there was an unspoken tension between us, a reminder of the line that had been crossed. Then one evening, I received a text from him. "I'm sorry about the other day. Can we talk?" I stared at the message, my heart racing. I knew I should ignore it, should keep my distance. But a part of me wanted to hear him out, to understand why he had said what he did. "Okay, come over tonight," I typed back before I could stop myself. When Jason arrived later that evening, the tension between us was palpable. We sat on the couch, the silence heavy with unspoken words. "I'm sorry for what I said," he began, his voice quiet. "I know I crossed a line, and I shouldn't have put you in that position." I nodded, not sure what to say. "I've been feeling really disconnected from Emily lately," he continued. "I love her, but we've been drifting apart, and I guess I've been looking for that connection somewhere else." I frowned, my heart sinking. "Jason, that's not an excuse. You can't just say things like that to me. We're friends, and Emily is my best friend. This isn't fair to her." "I know," he said, his voice filled with regret. "I just didn't know how to handle what I was feeling." We sat in silence for a while, the weight of the situation pressing down on us. I knew we needed to put an end to this, to stop whatever was happening between us before it went any further. "We can't do this, Jason," I said finally, my voice firm. "This is too messy, and it's not fair to Emily or Greg. We need to move on and forget about this." He nodded, his expression pained. "You're right. I'm sorry, Nicole. I didn't mean to make things complicated." Weeks passed, and slowly, things began to return to normal. Jason and I kept our distance, and I focused on my family, trying to repair the cracks that had formed in my marriage. Emily never found out about the conversation with Jason, and for that I was grateful. But even though things had gone back to normal on the surface, I couldn't shake the feeling that something had changed between us. There was a lingering tension, a reminder of the line that had been crossed, even if we had never acted on it. Looking back, I realized how dangerously close I had come to losing everything. The temptation, the excitement, it had all been fleeting. In the end, the most important thing was my family, and I had almost let that slip through my fingers. Sometimes, the hardest lessons are the ones you learn when you're standing at the edge of a cliff, deciding whether or not to jump. And I had chosen to step back, to protect the life I had built with Greg, because in the end, that was what truly mattered.